The Great Hall of the Interstellar Council stretched out like a small city. Hundreds of seats filled the curved rows, each one designed for a different alien species. Some delegates needed special breathing equipment. Others floated in tanks of liquid. A few hung from the ceiling in web-like structures. The air buzzed with dozens of different languages being translated into hundreds more. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in seat number 847 in the human section. It was a small section, tucked away near the back. Only 12 seats for the entire human race. Most other species had entire wings of the Great Hall. The Corvan Empire took up 3 full levels. The Zelathi Federation had their own private balcony overlooking everyone else. Elena watched the daily proceedings with patient eyes. Trade disputes between mining companies. Arguments about shipping routes. Complaints about tariffs on exotic foods. The same boring stuff that happened every day in the council. She had been doing this job for 3 years now, and most days were exactly the same. Her assistant, Marcus, leaned over to whisper in her ear. The vote on the Rigel grain subsidies is coming up. Should we abstain like usual? Elena nodded. Humans almost always abstained from votes. They were too new, too small, too unimportant to matter much. Their single star system and handful of colonies barely registered as a blip in galactic politics. Most species barely remembered humans existed until they saw Elena sitting there. The Speaker of the Council, a tall creature called Thring Kamol, called for order. His species, the Zelathi, had been running the council for over 200 years. Their blue skin shimmered under the lights as he spoke in his deep, commanding voice. The matter of mining rights in the Vega sector will now be discussed, Thrin Kamol announced. The Corvan delegation has the floor. Elena listened with half attention as the Corvans argued with the Altarian trade union about some asteroid belt. This kind of thing could go on for hours. She had reports to read, messages to send back to Earth, and a dozen other small tasks that kept the human diplomatic mission running. The morning session dragged on. The afternoon was more of the same. Elena found herself thinking about her daughter back on Earth. Sarah would be starting university soon. It had been 8 months since Elena's last trip home. The distance between the council station and Earth meant that even with the best human ships, travel took several weeks, around what passed for evening on the station. Elena received a priority message on her personal communicator. She read it twice, then read it again. Her face showed no emotion, but Marcus noticed her hands had gone very still. "Ma'am?" Marcus asked quietly. "Everything all right?" Elena looked at the message one more time. The timestamp showed it was 3 days old. Faster-than-light communication was still slow across such vast distances. She folded the device and put it away. "Clear my schedule for tomorrow morning," she said. "I need to address the council." Marcus looked surprised. In 3 years, Elena had never requested to address the full council. Humans usually only spoke when directly asked a question, and even then they kept their answers brief. "What should I tell them the topic will be?" Marcus asked. "Just say it's a matter of urgent importance to galactic security," Elena replied. The next morning, the Great Hall was even more crowded than usual. Word had spread that the human ambassador wanted to speak. Many delegates came just out of curiosity. Some brought their aides to record whatever amusing thing the primitive humans might say. Elena stood when called upon. She walked slowly to the center speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the massive chamber. She was a small figure compared to most of the alien delegates, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. "Honorable delegates of the Interstellar Council," Elena began, her voice clear and steady. "I come before you today to inform you of recent events that have affected my people." A few delegates whispered among themselves. The Corvan ambassador looked bored. Several others were checking their personal devices for messages. 3 days ago, Elena continued, an unknown force attacked our home. The whispers stopped. Every translator in the hall suddenly became very clear. Elena's words echoed in the silence that followed. Thrin Kamol leaned forward in his seat. Ambassador Vasquez, did you say attacked? Yes, Speaker. A fleet of unknown vessels appeared without warning in the Sol system. They began firing immediately upon our colonies and orbital stations. Elena's voice remained calm, almost conversational. They used energy weapons to turn 3 of our moons into molten glass. Several of our outer colonies were completely destroyed. The death toll is still being calculated. A murmur went through the crowd. Some delegates looked confused. Others seemed concerned, but in the way people feel sorry for someone else's misfortune. A few were already calculating how to divide up human territory once the species was extinct. The Altarian delegate stood up. This is terrible news, Ambassador. Do you know who was responsible for this attack? Elena nodded. We are still investigating, but we have gathered significant evidence about the attacker's capabilities and origin point. What assistance do you require? Asked the Speaker. The Council can provide refugee resettlement, territorial protection agreements, or military support for your remaining populations. Elena smiled for the first time since taking the platform. It was not a happy smile. That is very kind of you, Speaker, but unnecessary. We have already responded to this unprovoked act of aggression. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. Our response was, of course, proportional to the threat we faced. Something in her tone made the Great Hall go completely quiet. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed louder in the sudden silence. Proportional? Asked Thrin Kamol. Yes, Elena said simply. We destroyed them. The word destroyed hung in the air like a physical thing. Every delegate in the Great Hall stared at Elena Vasquez as if she had suddenly grown a second head. The small human woman stood calmly at the speaking platform, waiting for their response. THR in Dashka-Mol was the first to recover. Ambassador, when you say destroyed, do you mean you damaged some of their ships? Forced them to retreat? No, Speaker. I mean, we destroyed them completely. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology they brought to our system. Elena's voice remained steady and matter-of-fact. Nothing remains but scattered molecules and radiation signatures. A delegate from the Regilian Commerce Guild stood up. But Ambassador, forgive me, how is that possible? Human military technology is still quite basic compared to most galactic standards. Your largest warships are barely the size of our cargo haulers. Elena nodded politely. You are referring to the ships we use for normal diplomatic and trade missions. Those are not our military vessels. The confusion in the hall was growing. The Corvan ambassador activated his translation system to make sure he had heard correctly. Several delegates began checking their intelligence files on human military capabilities. Perhaps, suggested the Altarian representative, you could show us some evidence of this battle? Visual records, sensor data, something to help us understand what happened. Of course, Elena replied. She activated a small device she had brought with her. The air above the speaking platform shimmered and formed into a 3-dimensional display. The image showed the Sol system as seen from deep space. Earth appeared as a small blue dot, surrounded by the orbital stations and colonies that made up human civilization. At least, what everyone thought was human civilization. This is our home system 3.5 days ago, Elena explained. Here you can see the attacking fleet arriving. Red dots appeared at the edge of the display, moving toward the human settlements. There were dozens of ships, each one larger than anything in the human diplomatic fleet. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charging. The enemy fired first, Elena continued. They targeted civilian populations immediately. No warning, no demands, no attempt at communication. Their intent was clearly genocidal. The display showed bright flashes as the attacking ships opened fire. 3 small moons around Jupiter simply vanished, turned to glowing clouds of debris. Several orbital stations went dark. The assembled delegates watched in horror as what appeared to be the systematic destruction of an entire species played out before them. Then something changed in the display. New ships appeared. Not from outside the system, but from seemingly empty space around Earth itself. They were enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest vessels in the attacking fleet. Their design was unlike anything in galactic databases, smooth, organic curves that seemed to bend light around them. "These are our actual military vessels," Elena said quietly. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 30 seconds. The human ships moved with impossible speed and precision. Their weapons fired once, briefly, and the entire attacking fleet simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed in explosions or left as burning wreckage, but completely eliminated down to the atomic level. The Great Hall was absolutely silent. Every delegate stared at the display showing the aftermath. The Sol system looked peaceful again, except now it was protected by a fleet of massive human warships that had appeared from nowhere. "Where did those ships come from?" whispered the Zealothi cultural minister. Elena smiled that same unsettling smile. "They were always there. You simply couldn't see them." The display changed, showing the Sol system from a different perspective. This time, hundreds of ships became visible, orbiting Earth in carefully arranged patterns. Massive industrial stations appeared around previously empty moons. What looked like small asteroid belts revealed themselves to be weapons platforms and sensor arrays. "For the past 50 years, Elena explained, we have maintained a minimal presence in galactic affairs. We sent small ships, established modest colonies, and generally tried not to attract attention. This was deliberate policy." The Corvin ambassador found his voice first. "You've been hiding your true capabilities?" "We prefer the term maintaining operational security," Elena replied. "We are a naturally cautious species. When we first discovered faster-than-light travel, we spent several decades observing galactic civilization before making contact. We wanted to understand the political structure, the military capabilities, the social dynamics of the species we would be dealing with." She gestured to the display, which now showed star charts extending far beyond the Sol system. Hundreds of systems were marked with human symbols, all previously unknown to galactic intelligence. Our actual territory encompasses over 300 star systems. Our population is approximately 40 billion. Our industrial capacity exceeds the combined output of the Kovan Empire and Zealothi Federation. Elena paused to let these numbers sink in. "What you have seen of humanity represents less than 1% of our actual civilization." The Rigelian delegates stood up shakily. "But your technology levels, your ships, your weapons, our scans showed them to be centuries behind galactic standard. Our diplomatic vessels use deliberately limited technology," Elena explained patiently. "We built them to appear consistent with what a species of our supposed development level might possess. It was important that we not seem threatening while we learned about you." The display changed again, showing detailed scans of human technology. Power sources that made antimatter look primitive. Weapons that could crack planets. Ships that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Defensive systems that treated the strongest known weapons like gentle rain. "We have been watching," Elena continued. "Learning, understanding. For 50 years, we have maintained detailed files on every military asset, every political structure, every potential threat in this region of the galaxy. We have been very patient, very careful, very thorough." Thrin Kamol finally managed to speak. "Why reveal this now? What changed?" Elena's expression grew serious. Someone in this galaxy just attempted to commit genocide against an inhabited world. They attacked civilians without warning, without provocation, without even attempting communication. In our view, this crosses the only line that truly matters. The display showed tactical data scrolling past. Fleet movements, energy signatures, trajectory analyses. The attacking force had been traced back to its point of origin with surgical precision. The beings who attacked our home have revealed that someone in this galaxy possesses both the capability and the willingness to attempt species extinction. This forces us to abandon our previous policy of minimal involvement. Elena looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of different worlds. The age of quiet observation is over. The silence in the great hall stretched on for nearly a full minute. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the constant background chatter of translation devices had stopped, as if the machines themselves were too shocked to continue working. Elena Vasquez stood patiently at the speaking platform, watching the faces of the assembled delegates. She could see the progression of emotions: disbelief, confusion, fear, and slowly dawning understanding of what they had just learned. The Zealoty speaker, Srin Kamol, was the first to break the silence. His blue skin had turned several shades paler. Ambassador Vasquez, are you telling this council that humanity has been deceiving us for 50 years? Not deceiving, Elena replied calmly. Observing. There's a difference. We never lied about our capabilities. We simply chose not to reveal their full extent. A delegate from the Centauri Republic stood up with shaking hands. But the surveys, the intelligence reports, the economic data, everything we know about human space shows a small, primitive civilization struggling to establish basic interstellar commerce. Elena nodded. That is exactly what we wanted you to see. Every piece of data you gathered was carefully crafted to support that image. Your intelligence agencies are quite good, but they can only find what we choose to let them find. The display above the platform changed again. Now it showed a three-dimensional map of known galactic space, with human territories highlighted in blue. The assembled delegates gasped as they saw the true scope of human expansion. What had appeared to be a single star system with a few struggling colonies was revealed to be a vast empire spanning hundreds of worlds. Our real cities are hidden behind dimensional barriers, Elena explained. Our major industrial centers exist in folded space that your sensors cannot detect. Our largest fleets operate from bases in artificial pocket dimensions. For half a century, you have been looking at shadows while the substance remained invisible. The Kovan military attaché activated his personal communicator and began frantically sending messages. Elena watched him with mild amusement. Admiral Korax is trying to contact his fleet commanders, she observed. He wants to know why their deep space sensors never detected any of this activity. The answer is simple. We did not want you to detect it. The display zoomed in on several human worlds. Instead of the primitive settlements shown in council records, these planets revealed massive cities that stretched from horizon to horizon. Orbital structures that dwarfed anything in council space. Industrial complexes that could manufacture entire fleets in a matter of days. Our technology is not slightly ahead of galactic standards, Elena continued. It is approximately 2,000 years ahead. We developed faster than light travel while your species were still discovering fire. We have been exploring the galaxy for millennia. A delegate from the Vegan Trade Alliance stood up. If you are so advanced, so powerful, why hide? Why not take your place as the dominant species and rule the galaxy? Elena's expression grew thoughtful. Because ruling is not the same as leading. We prefer to understand before we act. Every species develops differently, creates different solutions to universal problems, finds different paths to wisdom. We wanted to learn from you, not simply conquer you. The display changed to show historical footage of human exploration, vessels observing various alien civilizations from a distance. Some of the scenes were hundreds of years old, showing human ships watching the early development of species that now sat in the council chamber. We have been your silent guardians for longer than your recorded histories, Elena explained. When the Rigel system was threatened by asteroid bombardment 300 years ago, it was human ships that quietly deflected the rocks. When the plague struck the Altarian colonies 2 centuries ago, it was human medical technology that provided the cure, delivered anonymously through intermediaries. The Altarian delegates' eyes widened. The miracle cure that saved 17 billion lives. That was you? One of many interventions, Elena confirmed. We have prevented 14 major wars, 7 ecological disasters, and 3 natural extinction events in this sector alone. Always from behind the scenes. Always without taking credit. The Corvin ambassador finally found his voice. But why? Why protect us if we are so inferior to you? Elena's smile became warmer, more genuine. Because intelligence and wisdom are rare in the universe, regardless of the form they take. Your species may be younger than ours, less technologically advanced, but each of you has developed unique insights, beautiful cultures, innovative solutions to problems we never considered. You are valuable not despite your differences from us, but because of them. The display showed scenes of alien art, music, literature, and scientific discoveries. The Zalathi mathematical theories revolutionized our understanding of quantum mechanics. Corvin military strategy influenced our own tactical doctrine. Altarian agricultural techniques have been adopted on dozens of our worlds. We have learned immensely from watching your civilizations grow and develop. Thrin Kamol leaned forward. Then why reveal yourselves now? Why abandon this policy of hidden protection? Elena's expression darkened. Because someone in this galaxy has just demonstrated that they are willing to attempt genocide against an inhabited world. The attackers who struck our colonies showed no interest in conquest, resources, or territory. Their only goal was the complete extinction of human life. The display returned to showing the tactical data from the attack. We traced their technology signatures, their energy patterns, their flight paths. These beings did not attack us out of fear, or greed, or territorial ambition. They attacked us simply because we existed, and they wanted us not to exist. A chill seemed to settle over the chamber as delegates realized the implications. In our observations of galactic civilization, we have identified several species with aggressive tendencies, territorial ambitions, resource conflicts. These are normal aspects of political evolution. We can work with species who want to expand, who compete for resources, who seek advantage over their neighbors. Elena paused, her voice becoming harder. But we cannot tolerate species who see extinction as an acceptable solution to their problems. The display showed star charts marking the point of origin for the attacking fleet. A system on the galactic rim, previously unknown to Council records. The beings who attacked us possess technology nearly equal to galactic standard. They have significant military resources. Most importantly, they have demonstrated that they view genocide not as a last resort, but as a first option. Elena looked around the chamber. This represents an existential threat, not just to humanity, but to every species in Council space. The Regilian delegate raised a trembling hand. What do you intend to do about this threat? Elena's smile returned, but now it carried an edge that made several delegates unconsciously step backward. We intend to have a conversation with them. As Elena Vasquez spoke the word conversation, every communication device in the Great Hall began buzzing simultaneously. Emergency signals, priority alerts, and urgent messages flooded in from across the galaxy. The delegates looked at their devices with growing alarm. Admiral Corax of the Corvan Empire was the first to speak, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Ambassador, I am receiving reports from our border fleets. Human vessels have appeared in orbit around Corax Prime, our capital world. They are massive. Our entire home fleet is requesting instructions." Elena nodded calmly. "Please tell them not to be alarmed. Our ships are there purely for observation purposes." More delegates began reading their messages aloud. The pattern was the same everywhere. Human ships had appeared without warning around every major populated world in Council space. Not attacking, not threatening, simply present. The Zalathi cultural minister's hands shook as she read her report. 17 human vessels are in orbit around our homeworld. Our defense platforms cannot get sensor locks on them. They appear to exist partially outside normal space-time. That is accurate, Elena confirmed. Our ships use dimensional folding technology. They can interact with your reality when necessary, but remain protected in folded space when not actively engaged. The display above the platform changed to show real-time tactical data from across the galaxy. Hundreds of systems, all with human ships in orbit around their most important worlds. The vessels were enormous, each one easily capable of destroying entire planetary defense fleets, single-handedly. Thrinkamol's voice cracked as he spoke. "How many ships do you have currently deployed for this operation?" "Approximately 12,000 vessels," Elena replied, as if discussing the weather. "Our total fleet strength is considerably larger, but we saw no need to mobilize everything for what is essentially a diplomatic demonstration." The Altarian trade representative stood up, swaying slightly. "Diplomatic demonstration?" "Yes, we wanted to ensure that our conversation about galactic security has the proper context. It is important that everyone understands the situation we are dealing with." Elena gestured to the display, which now showed detailed scans of the human ships. The vessels were unlike anything in galactic design databases. Their hulls seemed to ripple and shift, as if they were made of liquid metal that had decided to hold a specific shape. Weapons ports opened and closed like breathing, revealing energy systems that made antimatter look like chemical explosives. Shield generators created fields that bent space itself around the ships. "These are our standard patrol vessels," Elena explained. "Each one carries enough firepower to defeat a typical planetary defense grid. Their armor can withstand direct hits from stellar-class weapons. Their shields can deflect the energy output of a small star." A delegate from the Rigel Mining Consortium fainted. Medical personnel rushed to help him while Elena continued her presentation. "Now, regarding the beings who attacked our colonies." The display shifted to show a different star system, one that did not appear in any Council database. "We have traced them to their homeworld in the Epsilon Hydri system, approximately 47 light-years beyond Council space." The image revealed a planet surrounded by massive orbital fortifications. Weapons platforms, shield generators, and defensive stations created multiple layers of protection around the world. It was clearly a military stronghold designed to resist any conceivable attack. "The species calls themselves the Devourers," Elena continued. "They are a silicon-based life form that reproduces by consuming organic matter from other worlds. Their expansion pattern involves locating inhabited planets, sterilizing them completely, then using the biomass to fuel their reproduction cycle." The display showed historical data stretching back centuries. World after world going dark, entire species vanishing without trace. The Devourers had been systematically working their way through the galaxy, eliminating any life forms they encountered. "They have destroyed over 300 civilizations in the past millennium," Elena said. "Most were pre-spaceflight species who could not defend themselves. Some were early space-age civilizations who barely understood what was happening before they were extinct. We appear to be the first target who fought back effectively." The Corvan admiral leaned forward, How do you know all this? Because we have been watching them for the past 70 years, Elena replied. When we first detected their expansion pattern, we began monitoring their activities. We hoped they might eventually develop beyond their current genocidal phase of evolution. Unfortunately, that hope appears to have been misplaced. The display zoomed in on the Devour homeworld. The orbital defenses were even more impressive up close. Thousands of weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying capital ships. The planet's surface was covered with industrial complexes that seemed designed for processing organic matter on an astronomical scale. Their military strength is considerable, Elena admitted. Their technology is roughly equivalent to Galactic Council standards. Their strategic position is well defended. Under normal circumstances, they would be a formidable opponent for any Council species. She paused, letting that assessment sink in before continuing. However, these are not normal circumstances. The display changed to show the current situation around the Devour homeworld. The massive orbital fortifications were still there, but they were now surrounded by human ships. Not dozens of ships, or even hundreds. Thousands of human vessels had formed a perfect sphere around the entire star system, blocking every possible escape route. Our fleet arrived 6 hours ago, Elena explained. The Devourers attempted to fire on our ships when we entered their space. Their weapons had no effect. Our shields absorbed their entire defensive output without even fluctuating. The tactical display showed energy readings from the battle, if it could be called that. The Devourers had thrown everything they had at the human fleet. Weapons that could crack moons, energy beams that could boil oceans, particle cannons that could strip the atmosphere from planets. All of it had simply been absorbed by the human shields without causing any damage. We have not yet returned fire, Elena continued. We are currently conducting what we term population verification protocols. We are scanning their world to determine exact population numbers, military capabilities, and infrastructure targets. The Zalathi speaker found his voice. What do you intend to do to them? Elena's expression grew cold. That depends on their response to our communications. We have offered them a choice. They can agree to end their expansion into inhabited space and limit themselves to uninhabited worlds, or they can face the consequences of their actions. And if they refuse, then we will ensure they never threaten another species again. The display showed power readings from the human fleet, energy signatures that dwarfed anything the Council had ever recorded, weapons systems that could sterilize entire star systems. The message was clear. The Devourers were completely outmatched. The conversation I mentioned earlier is currently in progress, Elena said. Their leadership is being presented with detailed evidence of our capabilities, along with a comprehensive list of the species they have destroyed. They have been given 24 hours to respond. The Great Hall sat in stunned silence as the full implications became clear. Humanity had not just revealed themselves. They had positioned themselves as the ultimate arbiters of galactic justice. The age of genocide in this region of space, Elena announced, is officially over. The 24-hour deadline passed in complete silence from the Devour homeworld. Elena Vasquez stood once again before the Interstellar Council, but this time, the atmosphere in the Great Hall was completely different. Every delegate sat in perfect attention. Nobody checked personal messages. Nobody whispered to their aides. Everyone understood that they were witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The Devourers chose not to respond to our communication, Elena announced. Her voice carried the same calm tone as always, but now every word seemed to echo with finality. Approximately 4 hours ago, they attempted to break through our blockade using their entire remaining fleet. The display above the platform showed the final battle. Thousands of Devour ships, everything they had left, launched themselves against the human blockade in a desperate attempt to escape their star system. Their vessels were impressive, large, well-armed, and clearly built for warfare. The battle lasted 18 seconds. The human ships did not even appear to fire weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, space itself seemed to twist around the attacking fleet. Devourer vessels simply stopped existing, not destroyed by explosions, but apparently removed from reality entirely. In less than 20 seconds, a civilization that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was reduced to empty space and scattered particles. The Devourer species has been eliminated, Elena stated simply. Their homeworld has been sterilized. Their colonial outposts have been dismantled. Their technology has been analyzed and archived. The threat they represented to organic life in this galaxy no longer exists. The silence in the hall was absolute. Several delegates appeared to have stopped breathing. This brings us to the matter of galactic governance going forward, Elena continued. The Council has operated under certain assumptions about the balance of power in known space. These assumptions are no longer valid. Twin Kamal finally found his voice. Ambassador, what exactly are you proposing? Elena smiled, and for the first time since this crisis began, it was a genuinely warm expression. We are proposing very little change to your daily operations. The Council will continue to handle trade disputes, territorial negotiations, resource allocation, and all the normal business of galactic civilization. Your species will continue to govern themselves as they see fit. Relief began to show on some faces, but Elena was not finished. However, certain activities will no longer be tolerated anywhere in Council space or the surrounding regions. Aggressive expansion into inhabited systems ends immediately. Any attempt to conquer or destroy established civilizations will be met with immediate intervention. Most importantly, genocide in any form, for any reason, becomes impossible from this day forward. The Corvan Admiral raised a shaking hand. How do you intend to enforce these restrictions? We already are, Elena replied. She gestured to the display, which now showed the human fleet positions across the galaxy. Every major world in Council space now has a permanent human presence. Not an occupation force. Our ships will remain in folded space, invisible and undetectable unless action becomes necessary. The display showed the elegant solution humanity had implemented. Their massive vessels would patrol galactic space continuously, but remain hidden in their pocket dimensions. Normal civilization could continue without ever seeing them. But any threat to planetary populations would face immediate response. Your species will have complete freedom to develop, trade, explore, and grow, Elena explained. You may compete with each other economically, negotiate territorial boundaries, even engage in limited military conflicts if necessary. But the age of species extinction is over. A delegate from the Centauri Republic stood up. And if we refuse to accept this arrangement, Elena's expression did not change, but somehow the temperature in the hall seemed to drop several degrees. You are, of course, free to leave Council space and establish yourselves beyond our area of influence. The galaxy is vast. There is room for many different approaches to civilization. The unspoken implication was clear. Any species that chose to leave rather than accept a new order would be on their own when the next wave of devourer-like threats emerged from the galactic rim. However, Elena continued, we believe most species will find this arrangement beneficial. Your existing governments remain in place. Your internal affairs remain your own business. Your cultural development continues unimpeded. You simply gain protection from existential threats that you could not handle alone. The Zealothy cultural minister raised her hand. What do you gain from this arrangement? Why take on the burden of protecting all of us? Elena's smile became almost motherly. Because you are worth protecting. Every species in this chamber has contributed something unique to galactic civilization. Your art, your science, your philosophy, your ways of understanding the universe. These things have value beyond any military or economic calculation. The display showed scenes from across council space. Alien cities, works of art, scientific discoveries, cultural celebrations. The diversity of intelligent life was breathtaking. We learned long ago that a galaxy with 1,000 different voices is infinitely more interesting than a galaxy with only one, Elena explained. Protecting that diversity is not a burden. It is a privilege. Trinkamol stood slowly. As Speaker of the Council, the formal response would have to come from him. Ambassador Vasquez, you're asking us to fundamentally restructure galactic civilization, to accept human oversight of our most basic right to defend ourselves. No, Elena corrected gently. We are asking you to accept human protection of your right to exist. Self-defense remains entirely in your hands. But the difference between self-defense and genocide will now be monitored by beings capable of making that distinction effectively. The speaker looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of worlds. Slowly, understanding passed between them. This was not really a negotiation. Humanity had demonstrated capabilities that made resistance impossible. But rather than demanding submission or tribute, they were offering genuine protection in exchange for basic civilized behavior. The Council must vote on this proposal, Trinkamol announced. Of course, Elena agreed. Take all the time you need. Our ships will remain in position until you have reached a decision. The vote was unanimous. Not because the delegates had no choice, but because the choice was obvious. Accept protection from beings who had spent centuries quietly preventing disasters. Or face the galaxy alone with the knowledge that things like the Devourers were still out there. As the formal ceremonies concluded, and delegates began filing out to contact their homeworlds. Elena activated her personal communicator one last time. Command, this is Ambassador Vasquez. The integration phase is complete. Galactic Council has formally accepted the protection protocols. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2 of the observation plan. Marcus, who had been silent throughout the proceedings, finally spoke. Phase 2, ma'am? Elena looked out at the Great Hall, now mostly empty, except for a few delegates still trying to process what had happened. Phase 2 is when we start preparing them for the real threats, Marcus. The Devourers were just the beginning. There are things in the deep galaxy that make them look like children with toy weapons. She gathered her papers and prepared to leave. The Council thinks we just revealed ourselves because of one attack on our colonies. They don't realize that attack was exactly what we were waiting for. The perfect excuse to transition from covert protection to open guardianship. Marcus stared at her. You mean this was all planned? Elena smiled one last time before walking toward the exit. Marcus, humanity has been planning this conversation for over 200 years. Today went exactly according to schedule. The Great Hall fell silent as the human delegation departed, leaving behind a galaxy that would never be the same. In the hidden spaces between dimensions, 12,000 human ships took up their eternal watch, ready to ensure that the light of civilization would never again be extinguished by the darkness between the stars.